All right. So, looks like we're really diving deep into this whole differentiated classroom thing. You guys have sent us a ton of material.
Yeah,
And at the heart of it all seems to be this book, The Differentiated Classroom, responded to the needs of all learners,
yeah.
which it's from 1999.
Oh, wow.
So that might seem like ages ago,
Yeah.
but trust me, it's packed with insights that are surprisingly relevant even today.
It is amazing how these kind of foundational texts can offer a lens to view current practices.
Right.
Sometimes those older perspectives bring fresh insights to like modern challenges.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, let's unpack what differentiated classrooms are all about, why they matter so much, especially now,
Right.
and get into the nitty-gritty of how teachers actually make it work.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So first things first, let's clear up a common misconception.
Okay.
When people hear differentiated classroom, they sometimes picture like a watered-down curriculum.
Yeah.
Like we're making things easier for some students. Is that really what it's about?
Not at all. It's not about lowering the bar. Differentiation is about recognizing that every student comes to us with a unique set of strengths, needs, and interests.
Yeah.
It's about creating a learning environment that honors those differences and provides multiple pathways to success.
It's like tailoring the learning experience to each student, kind of like a custom-made suit versus a one-size-fits-all approach.
Precisely. And the book offers a really helpful analogy to illustrate this point. Imagine two first-grade classrooms, both using learning centers.
Okay.
In one classroom, every student gets the same task at each center.
Okay.
But in the other classroom, the teacher tailors the tasks within each center based on the student's learning level.
Okay, so it's the same concept being taught,
Right,
but the way students engage with it is personalized.
right.
I'm starting to see how this subtle shift can make a big difference.
That's the key. This seemingly minor adjustment is a powerful example of differentiation in action.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that even within a single classroom, learners are on different paths.
Right.
It's about creating a customized learning journey, not a one-size-fits-all experience.
That makes so much sense, especially when you consider how much the educational landscape has changed even since 1999.
Oh, yeah.
Classrooms today are incredibly diverse,
Mm-hmm.
with students from all sorts of backgrounds and with a wide range of learning styles.
Yeah,
I'm sure that impacts how teachers approach their instruction.
absolutely. And the book dives into this by exploring three key insights that highlight the need for differentiated instruction.
Okay.
These insights stem from research in psychology and brain science, and they challenge traditional views of learning and intelligence.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear these game-changing insights.
The first insight is that intelligence is multifaceted and fluid.
Okay.
It pushes back against the old notions that we have one fixed IQ that determines our capabilities.
Right. It's not just about being book smart.
Exactly. We have multiple intelligences, as Howard Gardner's theory suggests,
Right.
each with its own strengths and potential for growth.
I've definitely seen those online quizzes that tell you, like, what your dominant intelligences are.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I remember being a bit surprised by my results, actually.
Those quizzes can be fun, but the real takeaway is that our intelligences aren't static.
Right.
They can actually develop with the right experiences and effort. It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So that's the second insight, right?
Yeah.
The brain being like a muscle that grows through learning.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think that learning physically changes our brains.
It really is. And the third insight builds on this idea of growth.
Okay.
It's what the book calls the just right challenge.
Okay.
Remember the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears?
Of course, who doesn't love a good fairy tale analogy?
Well, just like Goldilocks wanted the porridge that was just right, not too hot or too cold.
Right.
Our brains thrive when we're challenged but not overwhelmed.
Okay.
If a task is too easy, we get bored and our brains disengage.
Right.
But if it's too hard, we get frustrated and shut down.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where we're pushing ourselves just enough to make progress and actually enjoy the process.
Exactly.
I can definitely relate to that feeling of frustration when I'm tackling something way over my head.
Yeah.
And that boredom that sets in when something feels too simple.
Exactly. And that's where differentiation comes in.
Right.
It's about creating that optimal learning zone for each student,
Okay.
recognizing that that sweet spot will be different for everyone.
Right.
And
So,
yeah, so we've talked about like what a differentiated classroom looks like and why it's so important, in today's diverse learning landscape.
right.
But I'm sure you're wondering how this actually plays out in a real classroom.
Right. It's one thing to talk about tailored learning experiences,
Yeah,
but how do teachers actually pull it off?
right.
Especially when they have so many students with different needs.
Well, the book provides a framework for thinking about how to differentiate instruction.
Okay.
It breaks down a lesson into 4 key elements that teachers can adapt.
Okay.
Content, process, product, and learning environment.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
Content seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
It's the information or skills being taught, right?
exactly. To differentiate content, a teacher might offer texts at different reading levels or provide various ways for students to access information.
Okay.
For example, some students might benefit from visual aids or hands-on activities.
So it's about providing different entry points to the same content
Right,
based on students' learning preferences and readiness levels?
exactly. And then there's process, which is all about how students make sense of that content.
Okay.
Do they work independently in pairs or in small groups?
Mm-hmm.
Do they engage in discussions, conduct experiments, or create presentations?
So process is about providing choices in how students interact with the material and demonstrate their understanding.
Yeah,
I can see how offering options here would keep things engaging for different types of learners.
absolutely. And then we have product, which refers to how students showcase what they've learned.
Okay.
Traditionally, this might be a test or a paper,
Right.
but in a differentiated classroom, the possibilities are endless.
I'm picturing things like videos, podcasts, artwork,
Yeah.
even building projects.
Exactly. It's about giving students the freedom to express their learning in ways that align with their strengths and interests.
And finally, there's learning environment. This one feels a bit more abstract.
Yeah.
What exactly does it encompass?
This refers to the physical and emotional atmosphere of the classroom.
Okay.
Think about things like seating arrangements, noise levels,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for movement, and the overall sense of respect and inclusivity.
So a differentiated learning environment might involve having flexible seating options,
Yeah,
creating quiet spaces for focused work,
right.
and fostering a culture of collaboration and support.
Precisely. It's about creating a space where all students feel comfortable and empowered to learn.
These four elements paint a comprehensive picture of what it means to differentiate instruction.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of managing all these different adaptations can feel a bit overwhelming.
Right.
Where do teachers even begin?
Well, that's where the book's toolkit of instructional strategies comes in.
Okay.
These strategies offer concrete ways to implement differentiation in the classroom.
Okay.
And they're not just theoretical concepts.
Right.
The book is filled with real-world examples of teachers who are using these strategies effectively.
That's reassuring to hear. I'm eager to dive into some of those examples and see how these strategies come to life.
One example that stood out to me involved Mr. Mack, a fifth-grade teacher,
Okay.
who found a brilliant way to differentiate spelling instruction.
Okay.
Instead of giving every student the same spelling list,
Right.
he tailored the spelling errors he introduced into their writing based on their individual skill levels.
So he's embedding personalized spelling practice within their regular writing assignments?
Yeah,
That's sneaky and brilliant.
exactly. Students who are still mastering basic spelling rules might get words with common phonetic misspellings,
Okay.
while those who are ready for a challenge might get words with tricky silent letters or irregular plural forms.
I can see how that approach would keep everyone engaged and challenged at their own level.
Right.
It takes the drudgery out of traditional spelling drills.
And Mr. Mack doesn't stop there.
Okay.
He also differentiates the feedback process.
Okay.
He sets up a proofreading center where students can practice correcting errors.
Okay.
He even writes little notes to students with specific errors, sometimes even adopting the persona of a book character or a sports hero to make it more engaging.
Wow, that's taking personalization to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It's like each student is getting individualized coaching on their spelling.
And the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Students are motivated to improve their spelling because they feel seen and supported.
Right.
They see proofreading as a fun challenge, not a chore.
It's amazing how such a small shift in approach can make such a big difference in student engagement and learning.
The book also highlights examples from other subjects. Take Ms. Howe, a third-grade teacher who came up with a fantastic way to differentiate alphabetizing practice.
Okay, alphabetizing, I'm picturing those old school flashcards with letters on them.
Not quite. Ms. Howe has created these amazing alphabetizing boards.
Okay.
Imagine brightly colored plywood with the heads of large nails sticking out.
Okay.
Students practice alphabetizing by hanging words on the nails in the correct order.
Okay.
It's visual and hands-on, which makes it so much more engaging than just writing letters on paper.
I love that, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just having fancy alphabetizing boards.
Here's where the differentiation comes in.
Okay.
Ms. Howe provides different students with different sets of words to alphabetize.
Okay.
Some get simple, familiar words with distinct beginning letters.
Okay.
Others get words that are more similar in spelling or configuration, requiring a deeper understanding of alphabetical order.
So she's essentially creating levels within the activity, ensuring that everyone is appropriately challenged.
Exactly. And to make things even more fun, she sometimes throws in a made-up word.
Okay.
Students get a small reward if they spot the fake word and can explain why it doesn't follow the rules of the English language.
That's brilliant. It turns alphabetizing into a little detective game.
Yeah,
And I bet it really makes them think critically about the patterns and rules of language.
you got it. And she's tapping into multiple intelligences here.
Right.
Visual, kinesthetic, and even logical reasoning with that spot the fake word challenge.
It's inspiring to see how teachers are taking these seemingly basic skills and turning them into dynamic learning experiences.
Another example from the book features Mr. Grant, a 7th grade physical education teacher.
Okay.
He uses differentiation to help students develop volleyball skills.
Okay.
Now, before you picture dividing the gym into skill-based zones, let me explain how Mr. Grant approaches it.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What's his secret?
Mr. Grant begins by carefully assessing each student's volleyball proficiency.
Okay.
He then divides the class into small groups based on their current skill levels.
Okay.
So some groups might focus on basic serving techniques, while others might work on more advanced spiking or blocking skills.
So everyone is working on the same sport, but the instruction and activities are tailored to their individual needs.
Exactly. And Mr. Grant doesn't just stand there and bark instructions.
Right.
He actively demonstrates the skills and provides individualized feedback to each student.
Okay.
He's like a personal coach for every student, even within a large class setting.
I love how he's creating that sense of individual attention, even in a group setting.
Right.
It must make the students feel really supported.
And to further enhance the learning experience, he encourages students to teach each other.
Okay.
Those who have mastered a skill can mentor those who are still working on it.
Okay, cool.
This not only reinforces their own understanding, but also helps to build teamwork and leadership skills.
It's incredible how a seemingly simple activity like volleyball practice can become such a rich learning opportunity when you incorporate these principles of differentiation.
These are just a few examples from the book, showcasing how teachers can differentiate instruction across various subjects and skill levels.
These examples are really painting a vivid picture of what differentiated instruction looks like in practice.
Yeah,
It's clearly about so much more than just tweaking a few lesson plans here and there.
right.
It seems to require a fundamental shift in the way teachers think about teaching and learning.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about content, process, and learning environment.
Right.
All essential elements of a differentiated classroom.
Yeah.
But what about those bigger projects? You know, the ones that really allow students to showcase everything they've learned?
Mhm.
I'm talking about those culminating moments that tie everything together.
Yeah, you're talking about those final products,
Yeah.
those opportunities for students to demonstrate their understanding in a meaningful and creative way.
Right?
And
Yeah.
yes, the book offers some compelling examples of how teachers are differentiating even these major assignments.
I'm all ears. I'm always on the lookout for fresh ideas that spark student creativity.
One example that really captured my attention was Mrs. May's 5th grade social studies unit on influential figures.
Okay.
Now imagine this, instead of assigning the traditional research paper,
Right.
Mrs. May empowered her students to choose a product that aligned with their passions and strengths.
That's a brilliant way to tap into student motivation.
Yeah.
What kind of options did she offer?
Well, some students opted for the classic research paper,
Okay.
and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But others ventured into creating documentaries, designing board games, even writing and performing skits.
Wow.
One student even went the extra mile and built a website dedicated to her chosen figure.
That's turning the classroom into a vibrant hub of expression.
Right?
It's like a learning museum showcasing different forms of understanding.
Exactly. And here's the key. Mrs. May didn't just throw out these options and hope for the best.
Right.
She provided clear criteria for each product,
Okay.
ensuring that students were still meeting the learning objectives of the unit.
So it's about providing structure and guidance even within a more open-ended project.
Right.
It's not about sacrificing rigor for the sake of creativity.
Precisely. And to enhance the learning experience even further,
Okay.
she encouraged peer assessment.
Okay.
Students provided feedback on each other's work, helping each other refine and elevate the quality of their final products.
That's a fantastic way to promote collaboration and encourage students to learn from each other's perspectives.
And think about the impact on student engagement.
Yeah.
When students have the autonomy to choose a product that genuinely excites them,
Right.
the learning process becomes so much more meaningful.
Right.
They're not just completing an assignment, they're pursuing a passion.
It reminds me of that saying, choose a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
It's about instilling that sense of purpose and joy in learning.
Absolutely. We want to nurture that intrinsic motivation in our students.
Right.
And differentiation can be a powerful tool for doing just that.
So far, we've explored stations, learning contracts, orbitals,
Right.
and now these differentiated final products.
Mm-hmm.
The book seems to offer a wide array of strategies for bringing differentiation to life.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that stood out to you as particularly innovative?
There is one more strategy I'd like to highlight: tiered activities.
Okay.
Imagine a staircase with each step representing a different level of challenge or complexity.
Okay, I'm picturing a tiered learning experience where students can progress at their own pace.
Mm,
Is that what tiered activities are all about?
You got it. Tiered activities involve creating different versions of the same activity, each tailored to meet students at their current level of readiness.
Okay.
The book provides a great example of how a high school science teacher, Mrs. Leitner, used tiered activities to teach her students about ozone depletion.
That's a complex topic. I'm curious to know how she made it accessible and engaging for all learners.
Well, she designed three distinct tiers of activities, all focused on the same core concepts,
Okay.
but varying in complexity and the level of support provided.
It sounds like she's scaffolding the learning, providing different levels of support along the way.
Precisely, the first tier was designed for students who were still building a foundational understanding of the scientific concepts.
Okay.
They engaged with simpler texts,
Okay.
watched informative videos,
Mm-hmm.
and participated in a hands-on activity to solidify their grasp of the material.
And what about the students who were ready to delve a little deeper?
For those students, Mrs. Leitner created a second tier
Okay.
that involved more advanced reading materials,
Okay.
encouraged independent research,
Mm-hmm.
and culminated in a presentation to the class.
So they were taking more ownership of their learning and applying their knowledge in a more sophisticated way.
Exactly. And for the students who were truly excelling and eager to push their understanding even further,
Right.
Mrs. Leitner designed a third tier. This tier challenged them to design and conduct their own experiment to investigate ozone depletion.
That's taking student-driven learning to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It's empowering students to become true scientists.
And it's important to emphasize that these tiered activities weren't just busy work.
Right.
Each tier was carefully crafted to be sure that students were developing a deep understanding of the concepts and applying their knowledge in a meaningful and authentic way.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored a variety of strategies, from stations to tiered activities,
Right.
all aimed at creating a differentiated learning experience.
Yeah.
It's clear that there's a rich toolkit available to educators who are committed to meeting the needs of all learners.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important to step back and acknowledge that differentiation is more than just a collection of techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fundamental shift in mindset, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. The book emphasizes that differentiation is not just about tweaking lesson plans here and there.
Right.
It's about embracing a philosophy of teaching that values individual differences and celebrates the unique strengths and needs of every student.
So it's about seeing each student as an individual on their own learning journey, not just a cog in a standardized system.
Precisely. It requires teachers to be flexible, responsive, and constantly assessing and adjusting their instruction to meet the ever-changing needs of their students.
And I imagine it requires a great deal of organization and planning.
Absolutely. The book offers some practical tips for managing the complexities of a differentiated classroom.
Okay.
It emphasizes the importance of establishing clear routines, utilizing flexible grouping strategies, and implementing systems for monitoring student progress.
So it's about finding that balance between structure and flexibility,
Right.
ensuring that there's framework in place while also allowing for individualization.
And it's important to remember that differentiation isn't something that teachers have to do alone.
Right.
The book highlights the power of collaboration both between teachers and students and among teachers themselves.
It makes sense that a collaborative approach would be essential for creating a truly differentiated learning environment.
Yeah,
Teachers can share ideas, resources, and best practices supporting each other along the way.
exactly. And ultimately, the goal of differentiation is to empower every student to reach their full potential, regardless of their starting point or learning style.
And that brings us to a question that the book raises but doesn't fully answer. How do we effectively measure learning in a differentiated classroom where everyone's path is unique?
That's a profound question, and it's one that educators are grappling with as they navigate the world of differentiated instruction.
Right.
If each student is on their own individualized learning journey, how do we assess their progress in a fair and meaningful way?
Right.
It's a challenge that invites ongoing reflection and innovation.
It's a challenge that underscores the complexity and beauty of teaching and learning.
Indeed. And while this book may have been published in the last century,
Right.
it speaks to the enduring power of great teaching.
Yeah.
It reminds us that while educational trends may ebb and flow,
Mm-hmm.
the core principles of differentiation remain timeless.
It's been an incredibly insightful deep dive, and I feel equipped with a deeper understanding of what it truly means to create a differentiated classroom. I'm excited to continue exploring these ideas and applying them in my own context.
And for those of you just beginning your journey into the world of differentiated instruction, remember that it's a process, not a destination.
Right.
Start small, experiment, and don't be afraid to learn and grow along the way.
And as always, we're here to support you on that journey. Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, and experiences with us on our website or social media. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep learning.